Parasite, a term that on reflex might cause one to shudder in revulsion. In the many varying adventures and stories of Superman, there's one foe who, in a cast of criminal masterminds, dark gods, and alien overlords who, while not as renowned, is still one of the Man of Tomorrow's most insidious and repulsive foes. Hey team, Phantom Skull the Super Security VTuber here, and today we look at DC Comics baddie Parasite, specifically 3 animated versions of him, to look at the differences between them and what ties them all together as one of Superman's more underrated villains. I'm going to need a shower after the amount of ick we're about to explore, especially with this specific creeper. For the sake of simplicity, we're only looking at 3 prominent versions of Parasite from 2 shows and a movie he had a major role in. Bit parts where he's just a quick antagonist or goon don't count. So to that end, we'll be looking at the DCAU Parasite, the Tomorrowverse Parasite, and the Adventures Parasite. And obviously spoilers ahead for all 3 of these properties. To begin, let's start with the OG of these 3. Time to dial it back to 1996, y'all.
In fact, it's feeding time right about now.
Appearing in the Season 1 episode Feeding Time, DCAU Parasite made for a disturbing first impression despite the all-ages tone of the show. Rudy Jones was a seemingly mild-mannered janitor at Star Labs, but one with his own vices. After accruing too much gambling debt, a crook named Marty that he owed money to pressured him into helping him steal experimental chemical canisters from his workplace. When the job goes south, Marty recklessly speeds out of the lab with Rudy and the unsecured chemicals in the back, getting the poor guy covered in them and leaves him for dead. Instead of dying, the chemicals mutate Rudy into a power-absorbing creature who can drain the energy and life force of any living being or source of energy he touches, getting stronger with the more he absorbs. After assaulting an officer and getting brutal revenge on Marty, a power-drunken Rudy sets his eyes on the ultimate target for his new darker urges in Superman and his powers. At the start, you might feel inclined to feel sorry for Rudy given what happens to him, but analyzing his pre-mutation behavior and just how quickly he devolves into a power-hungry sadist proves the man was a creep from the get-go. During the heist, he tries to stop Marty from shooting the Star Labs security guards. While seemingly noble, his dialogue makes it clear he's more concerned about copping a murder charge if they're caught and not out of concern for them. He complains about how much people walked over him all his life, and after getting his first taste of power, he relishes in taking his frustrations out on others. He was always a creep. He just never had the personal strength or will to do anything out of cowardice. A true definition of a parasite. Despite arguably being the most kid-friendly property in this video, given its time period and FCC restrictions, DCAU Parasite is honestly one of the most disturbing of the 3 when you read between the lines of his character. He's very much an allegory for a predator, and I do mean that kind of predator that starts with an S and that YouTube's monetization restrictions prevent me from saying. So yeah, we're going there. He's such a repulsive character. Between his assault of the female MPD officer, his sadistic pleasure in hurting Marty, and more specifically, his obsessive stalking, kidnapping, and capture of Superman to use him as a permanent meal to steal his powers and commit crimes. See, as strong as Rudy is after absorbing someone, this power is temporary. People he drains will slowly regain their energy and he'll lose it. However, his powers also come with the terrifying addition of stealing their memories as well. Anything you know, he knows after touching you, which is how he's able to find Superman and catch him unaware as Clark. Thankfully, with the help of his pal Jimmy Olsen and a protective anti-kryptonite suit Star Labs made for him, Superman is able to even the odds. With the help from a little kryptonite and Rudy's own arrogance, is able to defeat him. Thankfully, absorbing kryptonite while still harnessing Soup's powers left him in a vegetative state, and conveniently forgetting his identity. But like any good, marketable supervillain, Parasite was far from done. He'd appear prominently in other episodes like Two's a Crowd and Double Dose, with all of them showcasing his predatory behavior. Especially Double Dose, where his team up with fellow villain Livewire keeps unraveling as he can't keep his hands to himself, wanting Livewire's power, but her own electrical powers keeping him at bay. The Predator allegory is laid on thick in this episode, with Livewire clearly saying no means no, and after absorbing Superman's powers, immediately turns on her to steal her power, chillingly saying, "You said no to me for the last time." Rewatching Parasite's episodes as an adult leave me with a severe, icky feeling realizing the context of this character. Thankfully, the one thing that keeps DCAU Parasite from being a massive threat is his own incompetence. Rudy is not the sharpest tool in the shed, and he gives off a lot of similar vibes to Spider-Man villain Electro, someone who on paper should be a disastrous superhero team level threat, but hampered by their own lack of intelligence or strategy to properly use their powers to their full potential. He'd show up here and there in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited in small roles, and then dies in a hilariously sudden and anticlimactic death near the end of the series. While Parasite isn't aiming for global domination or mass destruction, that doesn't stop him from being one of DCAU Superman's most disturbing villains. Not going to lie, this is probably my least favorite version of Parasite, but I'll get to that in a moment. Alright, let's do this one last time. Rudy Jones is a mild-mannered janitor at Star Labs who doesn't have a gambling problem, is a decorated war vet, and also has a loving wife and daughter. Huh. Well, that's different. However, his luck turns for the worse when a battle between a young fledgling Superman and intergalactic space biker Lobo crashes into his workplace, leaving him pinned under some rubble and exposed to dangerous chemicals. These chemicals slowly mutate him into an out-of-control monster who absorbs the energy of everything and everyone he touches, and slowly turns him into an addict as he loses himself to his new hunger for more power. The more energy he absorbs, the more of a monster he becomes, and soon Superman is forced to fight him while trying to appeal to the good man he used to be. Superman's empathy pays off as Rudy, briefly lucid of what he's done and become, chooses to use his absorption powers to absorb an out-of-control reactor's energy to prevent a city-wide disaster and save his family at the cost of his own life. I honestly don't care for this more sympathetic take on Parasite. He's just a tragic creature feature character that doesn't match the slimy, predatory nature of the versions that you see in DCAU or Adventures. While he gets points for his absorption powers being far more horrifying, there's not much to it. He's just a sad, hurt person who lost himself to his own hunger. He's a predator in the animalistic sense, his search for power not out of personal desire, but base instincts, and going too long without draining someone causes him immense pain. That really doesn't go well with the parasite aspect of his name or character. Superman Man of Tomorrow heavily leans into the alien aspect of Superman, Martian Manhunter, and the rest of the cast, with it being an unsubtle allegory for immigration, and also real-life racism and xenophobia. The intention with Parasite was to show someone, a war vet and a father, who's mistaken for a scary, monstrous alien invader, and Superman stops to tell the scared and paranoid crowd that Parasite was born amongst them and was just like them. However, this does betray most versions of Parasite's characterization, and to be honest, just doesn't work well with that messaging. Even if he's a tragic monster, he still killed quite a few people and was a legitimate threat to the city. It kind of defeated the purpose of the allegory since he was a literal monster. And there was a way to keep that theme while not making him so sympathetic, and they could have used another character for the scapegoated immigrant fear for such a task. Now, this next part is going to be me giving my personal opinions on how I'd handle Parasite if I was writing this movie. To be clear, this is for fun only, and I do not consider this me fixing the movie. Man of Tomorrow, while not one of my personal favorites, is a solid animated DC movie, and was a breath of fresh air after so many bleak, edgy movies before it, and I do not intend to say I could do better. However, I know not everyone gels with this, so if you'd like to skip the glorified fanfiction, go to the timestamp ahead to wrap up Tomorrow vs. Parasite. No judging if you do. Now, if I was handling Parasite and needing to keep the alien immigration theme, personally I'd have him be the leader of some anti-alien hate group. Think X-Men's Friends of Humanity type organization. They're violent radicals who become paranoid of aliens and tear up parts of Metropolis thinking regular people are secretly aliens. This version of the character would be a parasite in the sense of him latching on to people's fears and prejudices to build his own power, and slowly getting drunk on his own radical Kool-Aid. He could even be a useful idiot type pawn to Luthor, who's bankrolling them on the down low, who gives him the experimental chemicals to try and use against Superman, but exposes himself. Gaining his powers will turn him into a warped monster who becomes addicted to draining others, slowly dropping his humanity first act to reveal the power-hungry creature he's become, with Superman needing to take him down while saving his former comrades from his rampage. In matching with the immigration theme of the movie, this Parasite is an allegory for the fact that often while obsessively looking for threats from immigrants that aren't there, you often end up ignoring the threats festering in your own backyard. It's as subtle as a brick, I will admit, but nothing in this movie was either, to be fair. While I didn't care for Tomorrow's Parasite, he did his job as a threat to the Man of Steel, and I'm sure others found more enjoyment in this more sympathetic version, and good for them if they did. Seriously, go watch Man of Tomorrow if you can. While I got my issues, it does feel like an underrated gem.
I built this company myself, and I deserve more.
My adventure with Superman's Parasite is interesting in the fact that he's basically a completely different character, with him being a mix of Parasite and fellow DC villain Dr. Ivo, who honestly isn't as well known as his android Amazo, and a dash of someone else, but we'll get to that. Dr. Anthony Ivo is a famous scientist and CEO of Amazotech, often hosting lavish galas to show off the latest inventions from his company. But behind the charming smile and wannabe Tony Stark aura hides a sinister, petty, and outright psychotic individual. Adventures Parasite is unique amongst his counterparts for the fact that he's a corporate parasite. He's a quintessential tech bro who leeches off the creations of his assistant Alex and others, branding it as his own, and short-sightedly puts profits and his own ego over safety and ethics. Like real-life tech bros. I've spoken before about Adventure Lex's status as a tech bro, and it's clear he learned a lot of rotten strategies while being abused by Ivo. But while Lex is a rage bait, pseudo-politician tech bro who uses his tech clout and cunning for political gain, and furthering his own hateful agendas, Ivo is a more traditional version of the trope. He's a corpo psychopath who puts on a good front of being a philanthropist and a fun guy to be around, but he steals the work of his employees, is shown to be heavily abusive behind closed doors, and incredibly short-sighted and outright deranged in his pursuit of his own greed or petty desires. In his debut episode, he disregards Lex's warnings that the 1.0 version of the Parasite armor would cause both psychological and physical damage to the user, desperate to stop Amazotech's board from ousting him due to his actions hurting the company. The Parasite armor slowly drives him insane, and almost kills the board member who disrespected him. After a climactic fight with Superman, and almost being killed by his own suit but still horribly disfigured, he grows a deranged obsession with destroying Superman, whose humility actually infuriates him. The Parasite armor slowly degrades Ivo's sanity throughout Season 1, leaving him a ranting, animalistic madman, only obsessed with absorbing more power and killing Superman to avenge his bruised ego. One of the most pivotal scenes of Season 1 is Ivo confronting Superman after saving him from his own armor. He delusionally blames Superman for his condition and spitefully demands to know what Soup's angle is and what he really wants, becoming violently unhinged as he literally cannot compute that Superman just wants to help people out of the kindness of his own heart. This obsession and hatred for Superman and not being able to believe or understand his empathy is the only sentient thought left with Ivo by the end of the season, as he grows more and more psychotic from the suit's influence. His power absorption eventually turns him into a kaiju-level monster, and with the help of his friends convincing all of Metropolis to shut off their power to cut him off, Superman is able to defeat him once and for all. While he does show up in Season 2, he's left as a raving madman who's quickly replaced by his former understudy Lex as the main tech villain of the series. This is a good segue to talk about the bald elephant in the room that is Adventures Parasite. For one reason or another, the show had a mandate in Season 1 that they couldn't use big-name Superman villains, including his greatest foe, Lex Luthor. While they fought to repeal that and snuck in Alex, just in case they could get him approved, it becomes very clear that they were tooling Adventures Parasite to be their Lex Luthor if that failed. I mean, it's all there. The evil tech CEO background, the seething psychotic hatred of Superman, the purple and green color scheme. Points for inverting the colors though. This man basically copied Lex's homework and forgot to not make it obvious. Regardless of being a backup Lex wearing an Evangelion reference, he's still one of the standout villains for My Adventures with Superman. But as I will get into in my upcoming villains ranking video of the show, this was not a high bar for Ivo to pass. It seems like he's poised to return to prominence in Season 3, but time will tell where this deranged corpo scumbag will land, now that the OG corpo scumbag has made his entrance. While radically different in motivations, personality, intelligence, and goals, all versions of Parasite share a same lust for power, and in different ways shows how it corrupts them, turning them into monsters. Some more figurative than others. Like many of Superman's villains, he shares a dark parallel to the Big Blue Boy Scout. A weak, petty creature obsessed with power for the sake of it, battling a man brimming with unlimited power, but the empathy and responsibility to use it for the good of all. While he isn't making everyone kneel, trying to take over the world, or destroying the universe, Parasite continues to be a much more personal, terrifying, and utterly repulsive villain who stands on his own in Superman's rogues gallery. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to take a long hard shower after looking at these creeps. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for checking out my video. If you enjoyed it, I appreciate a like and a comment down below. I'd love to hear which version of Parasite is your favorite, and your thoughts on the character. Be sure to subscribe for more superhero, anime, and other similar topics. I've got a long My Adventure with Superman villain ranking video in the works, so keep an eye out for that one. You can also follow me on social media for more updates or me yapping about comics and VTuber stuff as well. Thanks again, I'll see you all next time.